Yes, live from New York. This is Stone Gasman. Welcome to this 50th anniversary audio commentary for Stephanie Rothman's The Velvet Vampire. And joining me is Lauren Dixon, horror author and podcast pal. How are you doing tonight?
I'm exhausted from yet another day of early summer, which always takes a few weeks for me to really get into the groove of. This movie at 50 is a scary concept because that means I'm damn near 50. So I don't know how comfortable I am with these kind of anniversaries going forward.
Well, speaking of anniversaries, after that we're going to be doing The Velvet Vampire tonight. 2 weeks from now, on Monday the 28th, I will be doing a 50th anniversary audio commentary for Willy, Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I'm hoping to get at least maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 people in on that. So just to let everybody know, I'm very excited about that because I'm a huge Gene Wilder fan. Do you like Willy Wonka, real quick, Lauren?
As far as films go, yes, but obviously it's not my chosen genre.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. So, well, tell you what. For everybody listening out there, we're going to start the movie off actually at the title card because we were talking before we started about different prints having various running times that, we have different copies, and obviously we're going to be off. So we're going to start at the title card of The Velvet Vampire, which is enveloped in red. I'm watching on this Scream Factory Blu-ray, which I'll be talking about later, which unfortunately is long out of print now. They only put out a limited edition number of those and everything. So I think we'll start down from 3, 2, 1 and play for The Velvet Vampire. You ready, Lauren?
I will be when you say play.
Okay. Counting down. 3, 2, 1, and play. And we are now watching The Velvet Vampire, starring Michael Blodgett, Sherry Miles, and Celeste Yarnell. And I got to tell you, Lauren, real quick, that when I saw Michael Blodgett's name at the top, I just had a huge smile on my face because, as a lot of people know, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is my second favorite movie of all time. And he plays a gigolo in that movie. He's so awesome. And he delivers Roger Ebert's dialogue just as beautifully as everybody else. And my favorite being this lady says, "But you said $1,200," and he says, "No, I wanted $12,000, baby." So I knew I was going to love this film right away. But what is your history with this film, sir?
So back in the days of video stores, Embassy Home Video released a sleeve that just had it was one of their slapdash releases, in that it was just a publicity photo on the cover framed out, and then the title on the top. So it wasn't exactly something that you raced as a kid to rent, right? Because it was just a headshot, basically, a costumed headshot, but nothing that exciting. But like anything, I eventually got around to renting it, and I think the fact that this is much more of a soft core film in many ways, it definitely was both a good thing at the time and a bad thing at the time. Because even then, I was more in for the horror, but of course I was still a young man, so, it kind of worked on both levels. I want to say just off the bat, though, before we go any further, that I'm actually a much bigger fan of Stephanie Rothman's follow-up to this film, which is Terminal Island. Which is a tremendous action film that basically was the predecessor to Escape from New York in every single way. It's about the government taking an island and making it a penal colony because they've outlawed capital punishment, and about people having to escape from it. Sound familiar?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes,
but it has that early 70s grimy independent charm to it, whereas Carpenter's film obviously has a very glossy 80s charm to it. So they're different in appeal, but I am a huge Terminal Island fan, so the director is definitely royalty as far as I go. Is the copy you're watching widescreen?
It is indeed 1080p high definition widescreen. Yes.
So mine is not. Okay, this would be fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, got what I got.
Yeah, I mean, I had the choice of either getting this Blu-ray or getting it as a compilation with 3 other movies, and I decided to just pitch in and get the Blu-ray just because it looked like the type of film to appreciate on Blu-ray specifically.
No, I hear that. I hear that. The problem I'm having is just that I'm finding myself more and more I want to collect and own the things that are no longer going to be around, which is older films, smaller audience films. Because honestly, after physical media is gone, no, Netflix is not putting Velvet Vampire up.
Oh
right?
no, of course not. That was probably the last time it will get a release.
Right. So I mean, maybe Prime would have it, but again, the average person is not going to pay to rent a movie from this time period that they don't know. I mean, the next generation is just not going to be interested. I'm really worried about films like this. But the problem is there's so much that I want to own from the decades gone past that you can't possibly buy it all. So it becomes a game of, if I spread the extra money for Velvet Vampire, is that going to cost me what 3 movies would cost from different time periods? And that's where it gets muddy for me about what I should do. But I do want to say, like, this film is a good example of what I call the cheap slide, right? So this was made cheaply, and when I do want to say, like, people probably felt it was a extremely cheap film. But now, because of what film looks like now, this looks gorgeous. And it's really funny that a Corman production of a certain vintage would now look like classic film.
Exactly.
I find that fascinating, and it tells you to open up your eyes to stuff that's made in the margins, because there's probably, in the right hands anyway, there's probably a lot more there, and in time you'll appreciate it.
Well, I mean, what drew me to this film specifically, because I had no idea this film existed for many years, and it was really due to Anna Biller and The Love Witch. It's pretty clear that she, I think she is a fan of this movie. I mean, when you see The Love Witch, you see a lot of interesting parallels. I mean, interesting shots that seem almost directly inspired, but it was really because of The Love Witch I had to check this out, and luckily I was able to get one of these copies before it sold out. But I mean, when did you first see this movie?
I couldn't pinpoint a year for you, but it would have been late 80s.
Late 80s? Wow.
On VHS, it definitely wasn't. People talk about seeing stuff like this on cable. I didn't have cable growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And this would not have hit broadcast. So it would be VHS. And I remember the cover I don't remember which store it was, but I remember the cover very vividly in my head. So it's definitely something I rented.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be that whole excitement of you go to a video store and you rent something and it's potluck because you really didn't know, right? And then you'd go home and you throw it in, and you were excited to throw it in too. Even if you fast forward just a few years to the first incarnation of Netflix, discs by mail. Even then, by then, you'd get a disc and it would sit on top of your television for a week before you got around to playing it. But back in the VHS days, in the beginning, the idea was so exotic of being able to watch a movie when you wanted, that you watched them that night and you got them back, and it was exciting. And it made you want to like everything you rented too, which is different now that you can just literally click. It starts playing. If you don't like it within 5 minutes, you can turn it off and go to something else. You don't have that investment. And I think that harms a lot of smaller independent films today that aren't the Avengers, you know, that have that instant gratification of, look, there's an explosion and a guy's flying in the first minute and a half. Because right now we're watching an art show, you know? Well, actually, we're watching a woman in a bathtub, so it just got a little bit more interesting visually. But
oh, absolutely.
You're talking about Love Witch's influences. You know, I mean, films like The Witch That Came from the Sea and Fascination, all the early genre Roland films, and even some of the early Jess Franco films, they used to have that that softcore, sometimes hardcore aesthetic applied to horror films, or at least gothic films. I'm thinking for Jess Franco, I'm thinking another thing that probably was a big influence on her was probably The Awful Dr. Orlock. And then even some earlier Mario Bava, definitely, right? So I'm thinking Blood and Black Lace probably was. If I had to guess what was in her DVD rack next to her television, the constant watches, I'd say they're there.
Shout out to Jamie real quick in the chat.
I don't have that up.
But I love this these cars in the movie. I mean, the house that they go to in the middle of the desert. That they call this on the commentary. They call this in California the high desert. The house that they go to. Oh, go ahead.
But wasn't this shot mainly in Joshua Tree State Park?
I know it was shot in California somewhere.
I don't remember I don't remember. I don't remember the cars from this movie. What I remember is there's a dune buggy at some point.
Yes, the yellow dune buggy. But I like this blue. I like this blue car too.
I miss muscle cars. Period.
Now, Stephanie Rothman produced and directed this with her husband for Roger Corman, and they did The Student Nurses, I guess, right before this. Have you seen any of those nurse pictures?
No.
No? Okay. I saw the last one, which was called Candy Stripe Nurses, and I think that's the only one I've seen. But Jonathan Kaplan directed the third one. I mean, there's like 5 in the series. And when she made those movies, she had no idea what exploitation was, and she said that Roger never even mentioned it. You know, that they were able to get away with putting all these progressive themes like abortion and immigration inside potentially a nurse film that promises nudity and that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting mixture.
Well, Corman is really, but Corman of the vintage years, whether you talk about the Poe adaptations of the 60s or whether you're talking about the teen exploitation films of the 70s, we really are talking about a producer who had figured out that you could make a film in 3 weeks as long as it was pre-marketed. As long as the market was very clear, you could do it on the cheap and basically just in pre-sales on release. You were going to be fine. He didn't live and die by box office, which is funny because we're so in a different place today. Now, if you don't make it if you have a bad opening weekend, the industry writes you off as a filmmaker and a producer, right? You don't get a chance to build anything. But he realized that, hey, if I open this in the drive-ins under one title and I open this in New York in another title, and then maybe if it does really well, we'll try the suburbs with whatever worked in those markets. It was different. Regional rollout made a lot of difference, but also just the fact that he knew who his audience was so clearly that they could throw messaging and other things into the movies because it was already pre-sold. It was already a done deal. Today, we can't take chances because everything's a crapshoot because you're trying to appeal to everyone. And that's the mistake. You know,
here's the dune buggy. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I knew. I remember that.
Do you remember the flowered suitcase?
I don't, but something tells me I will. It's been years since many years.
And you were right. It was filmed in Joshua Tree, Mojave Desert. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this period where a lot of films were using Joshua Tree for a lot of things, and it was the same. It was the same. Like It's a Mad Mad World used it. But it was a famous hangout for a lot of bands. They'd be on tour, and then by the time they got to California, they would take a week off just to hang out in the park. So it kind of already had this hippie artist aesthetic, all the towns surrounding. I love, and I don't know if we're going to have this in the future, but I love how films of the 60s, 70s, not really the 80s, but the 60s and 70s in particular, they all have the fashion of their time written all over them.
Yes.
But in a way that doesn't seem dated so much as they become period pictures. Mm-hmm. Whereas something like Scream, I'm going to say, is going to always look like the 90s, but it's not going to become a period picture. It's going to look like something that's outdated, to me.
I can't emphasize enough, though, if I could live in any time period in the 20th century, it would be the late 60s, early 70s. This is something about that time.
I would definitely go earlier, but...
more like 40s or...
Problem with the 40s is, of course, the Second World War.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I would love to have done, say, 28 through 44. That would be great. And then
the Daily Ghost in the chat said, I literally went to a sound bath, quote unquote, out near Joshua Tree a few weeks ago. It was ridiculous.
Well, then it's still going, isn't it?
It's still going.
Yeah.
Now, okay, in this scene, we find out that Celeste Arnell, as the Velvet Vampire of the title, serves them raw meat, like beef tartare, which I've never tried, but yeah, it's basically uncooked meat. And apparently...
brine-washed meat.
Yes, and she said on the commentary that apparently for 19 years later on in her life that she actually wrote books and did studies on homeopathic courses for cats and dogs and would feed them raw meat, like raw liver. She would feed her own cats raw liver, so that it was like the best thing for them.
Well, the thing to keep in mind, folks, is that cats and dogs have digestive systems built to eat uncooked food. We do not.
Of course.
Please be very careful about your consumption of uncooked meats and fishes.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Michael Blodgett also became an author. He wrote thrillers, but he also wrote some screenplays, and this is going to blow your mind, Lauren. He wrote Rent-A-Cop with Burt Reynolds and Liza Minnelli. Then he wrote Turner and Hooch with Tom Hanks. And then finally, one of his last screenwriting credits was Run, the cult film that's now lost forever with Patrick Dempsey and Kelly Preston. He wrote all three of those movies.
It's fascinating, again, the people that come out of the Corman school, how much influence they've had and how much they did.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And again, I think it's that, hey, you got 3 weeks and you got $600,000. Figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's also just a different time, though. It's funny. I think actors were willing to treat it more like an art and less like a business. Actors like to talk about the art today, but they don't treat it as an art. They definitely treat it as a business. So I think it was just different. You could pull together 40 people who are really into the idea of making this movie, no matter what it was, and they'd invest everything they had to get it done. Today, everyone wants to do that and make a living and have health care and stuff, and that makes a big difference.
Ouch. What was that? It was probably just a coyote. Yeah. Michael Blodgett was married 4 times, and obviously he had the looks where he probably got it often. But you know who his last wife was? Meredith Baxter Burney from Family Ties.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just tells you that
last wife. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hollywood is just not a big enough town. Clearly,
it's not big enough. Not big enough at all. But every room in this house has a decor that I just can't take my eyes off of. The skull on the table with the...
Well, again, when you had a limited budget, you had to make what you could afford really interesting.
$165,000 was what this movie cost. Yeah.
And believe me, you couldn't go to Corman and say, "Hey, we need more." That was not in the that was not in the cards.
Yes, exactly. And remember, they were shooting in the desert. Stephanie Rothman, even though she's very proud of this movie, she said it was such a rough shooting out in the middle of the desert. I can imagine as well. Now, Celeste Yarnell, she was in a horror movie a year before this called what? Beast of Blood. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I know I have. I remember virtually nothing. Again, it's the VHS days. Everyone remembers the cover of it's the zombie tearing off its own head, which is nothing to do with the film whatsoever. It was just how they marketed the thing. A much cheaper film than this.
Yeah.
I remember virtually nothing about it, though.
And okay, and I need verification on this because I know you would know this better than I would. But this wasn't the first vampire lesbian movie, right?
No. I think Daughters of Darkness came out before this, even, which would probably be the gold standard. But
that's
no,
1970 or
69, I think.
69.
I mean, there was earlier versions of Carmilla and. Yeah, I mean, even if you really want to get into it, there's no graphic scenes, but Dracula's Daughter is definitely a lesbian vampire movie. And that's what, 38?
Oh, yes. That's the classic one.
Yeah.
Daughters of Darkness actually came out in May of 1971 in New York City. Wow.
Okay, so contemporarily with this. But I mean, what was permissible in
was Lesbos? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, Jess Franco, yeah,
Jess Franco.
What was permissible in Europe was very different than what was permissible here. So
right.
But by the time they got over here, when those movies came over, it was either many years later or they got cut. So. At least we're past that. I always talk about what's wrong with the movie business today, but let's talk about something that's right for a second. Is that movies don't get diced to pieces. It just doesn't happen anymore. There's no need. So this is a. I guess this is like the famous shot from the film, because it's like a 3-panel optical, and it's done well enough because the picture's soft enough to begin with that you can't tell the edges of it. But that shot was probably, I don't know, a quarter of the budget. Very seriously. Because it was all lab work, so sure. Okay, it's Michael Bay / Zack Snyder slow-mo nudity there.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And see, Stephanie Rothman, she at the Nevada Women's Film Festival, she's still with us, by the way. She's in her mid-80s, but she won the Vanguard Award in 2018, and she was quoted as saying that see down here, a Stephanie Rothman film deals with questions of self-determination. My characters try to forge a humane and rational way of coming to terms with the vicissitudes of existence. My films are not always about succeeding, but they're always concerned with fighting the good fight. And you know, they did like a Q&A with the student nurses and everything, and showed how you know, this has gotten quite a bit of feminist study over the decades. Oh, I love the hats. I love that. Don't you love the hats, Lauren?
I'm a hair and eyes guy, so it had me way before the hat.
Oh, she wears the best hats in this movie. I mean, that dune buggy would be so much fun to ride, I think.
Dune buggies for a while were in just so many films, and now it's like you never see a dune buggy.
Yeah, I never see the dune buggy in a movie anymore. No. Maybe, I think the last time was, what, Clerks 2? Oh, no, that's Go-Kart. Never mind. That's just...
I don't know if you could make a go-kart movie anymore. Do they even... do they make dune buggies? Are they still being made?
I'm pretty sure they do still get made. Yeah, they're like $2,000, but you can get them. Yeah, they look just like the ones here in the film. So yeah, they still do them. Yeah.
I think I need a dune buggy.
Yeah, I know. Tempted to get a dune buggy after this.
They definitely aren't like Jersey road legal, but whatever.
I mean, seriously, if I had a house in the middle of the desert, though, the house that they're at, I would decorate it exactly as it looks in this movie. Just because I fell in love with the house that much.
So are you getting serious inspiration for Rose the Hat from Dr. Sleep?
Oh yes, yes.
A little bit maybe.
What was her character's name?
Rose the Hat.
Rose the Hat, exactly. Yes, Rose the Hat. Exactly. Now it's interesting, you know, women's film and its progression. You know, you could say that the first horror film directed by a woman is 1913's Suspense, which showed 3 different shots in 3 different locations, courtesy of Lois Weber. And then, of course, Ida Lupino made thrillers in the 50s, you know, about, you know, rape and revenge and kidnapping and stuff like that. The Hitchhiker being the, I think, most famous of them. But would you consider this the first real, genuine horror film directed by a woman?
You know, I would have to actually really do some
double check that.
Because I mean, it seems unlikely.
Yes, I know it seems unlikely. I mean, but I can't think of.
Well, I don't want to spend our time Googling, but it just seems. It seems like it would have to have happened before.
Well, I mean, in the 60s, the only women directors that we had were independents. I mean, Agnes Varda, Stephanie, Clark, I forget her first name, but yeah, I mean, they were very few and far between, because what happened is that even though in the silent era, you know, women had tremendous power in terms of directing and screenwriting, after women got the right to vote, they were kind of pushed out of all facets of filmmaking except for screenwriting. And all we had in the 30s was Dorothy Arzner, and she played the male game by actually dressing like a male.
Well, so you have to remember the other thing that happened along that timetable, because it's not just simply pure sexism. There's a deeper issue.
It's not all misogyny. No.
well, sexism and misogyny aren't necessarily the same thing, but
yeah.
there's you have the birth and then popularization of the idea of film school being necessary to go into the trade.
Yes.
Which was definitely in the silent era wasn't true because it was such a new medium. But as the film schools grew up and became prominent, it became a boys' club for the same reason academia always makes things boys' clubs.
Yes, of course.
Which is just you gather money together, and there becomes an in crowd. And that was certainly even true through the 80s. I mean, when you had your explosions of your Spielbergs, your Landises, your Dantes, it wasn't that they were pushing women aside. It's that they weren't willing to give up their own opportunities, and they were pretty bullish. There's only so much oxygen in a given room.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the film school environment, it really, really reinforced that. I don't think art benefits from school. I don't. I think craft demands a certain amount of learning, but I think that when you institutionalize learning about an art, it's almost guarantees stagnation. And I think that's what we got. I mean, all those artists led to kind of like the stale, hermetically sealed films that we get today, where you don't feel anything and nothing feels. I feel like there's no stakes and all the character beats are the same. Back when you had artists make films who were figuring it out on their own on set, there was some real creativity, and you ended up with films that meant something and felt like something. So this has to be some kind of like Western backlot or something.
I was wondering that. I mean, because it looks like a ghost town that would have been used in like an old 40s or 50s movie, which I really kind of like that, though. Said that this was basically in the middle of nowhere in the high desert of California. Oh, man. But I just can't. They're wearing sweaters. I mean, she's wearing a sweater in what is probably, 90 degrees or something outside. Oh, this is the rattlesnake scene.
Yeah, where they clearly just dump the rattlesnake on the actress.
It didn't look real to you, or?
From my memory, it's like when we don't see the rattlesnake actually like get into position. It's just like suddenly on her.
Right.
No, am I right, or am I remembering it incorrectly?
We don't see an actual shot of the rattlesnake actually going on. It was almost like
I don't think rattlesnakes work that way.
Yeah, I don't
rattlesnakes.
She needs the blood to survive. As with most vampire movies, I'm starting to appreciate the vampire genre a little bit more. I used to dismiss it as just being, okay, yeah, all they do is just bite necks and drink blood and keep living. I mean, is that all there is to them? But you dig deeper in subgenres and you find very interesting movies. And I saw very recently 30 Days of Night, which I thought was a really cool vampire movie. But my vampire film education, unfortunately, is rather low.
So I went through a long period where I hated vampire movies. So I like classic vampire films, obviously, and by that I mean both Golden Era and Silver Era. So I'm going to include all the Hammer stuff in there and things like the Jack Palance Dracula. But in the 80s, specifically, it started really with Anne Rice, the publication of Anne Rice's Vampire Lestat. Not Interview with a Vampire, which was I thought a decent read when it came out, but Vampire Lestat kind of set the mode, and it was the cool vampires. And that ultimately gets to the point of The Lost Boys, a film that I know a lot of people love. I'm not one of them. When the vampires were no longer monsters, I really started to dislike that subgenre. Yeah, you see, I don't think the snake can do that.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I'm not sure why it would, but.
Do you prefer Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark to The Lost Boys?
Sure, because they're a lot closer to monsters.
Right.
It still has the element because the girl is obviously like, you know, sympathetic and whatever, and I kind of hate that. But yeah, I mean, when you get down to it, vampires should not be pretty, and I was saying that for years before Twilight. You know, Twilight was the natural evolution when we start with things like Lost Boys, we end up with Twilight, which is why it's ironic that Near Dark ended up with the Twilight cover, not, you know, for the video release. But
have you ever sucked and spit out venom from somebody that got bit by a snake?
I can't say I have.
You know,
I mean, I'm not saying I haven't cosplayed it though.
I'm just going to throw out
safe words are important, friends.
Oh, I'm going to throw out there that Woody Allen made a film in 1971, the same year, called Bananas, where he gets mistaken for like Castro and everything. There's one of the funniest scenes in the movie is when he's in that training camp in the middle of the jungle, and like they do decide to do snake poison training. Like, okay, so whenever you get to snake bite, you suck out the poison, and everybody repeats the same thing, and then you get to Woody Allen, he says, I can't. I will not suck anybody's leg who I'm not engaged to. But yeah, I just want to own everything in that house. I mean, the paintings, the whatever that thing is on the piano. That's awesome.
It's some kind of hollowed out horn that's been made into a vase.
It's some kind of horn. I love the little
it's like a bison horn or something.
I love the little orange kettle, like on the stairwell right there. I mean, just little things like that. Makes me wonder if this was all intentional or if this was an actual house up there in the high desert that they just found and shot in.
It's probably like some record producer's house or something.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe it was Z-Man. Maybe no. Yeah, Z-Man's pad up in the high desert. Michael Blodgett, sadly, he passed away in 2007, less than a year after he did interviews for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls physical media. And he talks about like how like he met like a couple of delivery guys, Navy guys who were astonished to see him because it was like, oh, I remember when you were beheaded in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls because I was on acid or whatever and your head fell right in my lap. As what I love about that beheading is that as a joke, they decided to put the 20th Century Fox fanfare over it, which is so bizarre, but so awesome at the same time. See, I just want to feel that as much as she does.
I don't even understand how his hair is possible. The pompadour is just, it's a mystery of science to me. Even when I had hair, that would have been an impossible thing to do.
Rothman, when she left Corman in the early 70s, she actually directed films for the newly created Dimension Pictures. And she said in a 1973 interview, after she directed a series of films like Group Marriage, Terminal Island, which you brought up before, and Working Girls, and she also wrote the script for Beyond Atlantis, of all things. She said, I'm very tired of the whole tradition in Western art in which women are always presented nude and men aren't. I'm not going to dress women and undress men. That would be a form of torture vengeance. But I certainly am going to undress men, and the result is probably a more healthy environment, because one group of people presenting another in a vulnerable, weaker, and more servile position is always distorted. I was never happy making exploitation films. I did it because it was the only way I could work. However, her movies have come to receive much critical appraisal since then. So, yeah.
I think that there's, it's always dangerous to not have any context. So, certainly in some films, female nudity is there for just the male gaze. Although I'm going to argue that if anything that you project against a wall that's 8 foot high is there for someone's gaze, right? But the thing that I think we need to acknowledge is that the tradition of female nudity in the arts has always overshadowed male nudity in the arts, going back to classical Rome and sculpture. There was always more female representations of what we call nudity. So it bothers me when people see it as a power thing. Now, in some cases it is, certainly, and you can make it into a power thing. But I don't think in a vacuum it necessarily is. And I think, like you bring up The Love Witch, I don't think the nudity in that film is meant to demean any of the females that...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like a tool like anything else, I do think that a lot of filmmakers who think they'll escape the exploitation field to get their start in tend to say a lot of things about the exploitation genre that are unfortunate and muddy the water for people who come later. Because once you've heard a director talk about a film, it's hard not to see what they're talking about. But exploitation movies are pure cinema. The idea that you're going to make a film that no one's going to watch, because that's the exact opposite of exploitation cinema, right? The pure art film, the Andy Warhol like paint drying motion picture, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, the whole point is it even art really if no one watches it? If you're not communicating in some way, is that really art? To me, I'm going to say no. So exploitation is just the most pure form of art as communication, as art as expression, because you're hitting the most people you can. And does that mean that you're going to have elements that are lowest common denominator, like what we're seeing on screen right now? Yes. Is it necessarily a bad thing? I'm going to say no. And as far as male nudity,
all of the dress that she was wearing when she goes down and bites her neck, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
But as far as male nudity, it's funny because the biggest thing there is if these producers during this era had found that putting naked men on screen made them more money, they would have done it in droves. For whatever reason, the female audience at this time was not pushing for that. They were not necessarily searching out films for male nudity the way males were searching out movies for female nudity.
Right.
But believe me, the exploitation filmmakers were not prudes. They weren't sitting there saying, oh, no, we can't put a man naked on screen. If it would have brought them money, that's all the movie would have been.
That's all it would have been. Exactly.
Right. But for whatever reason, you can get women to buy a ticket to a film in which a woman disrobes, but it's harder to get a man to buy a ticket for a movie where a man disrobes. Take that for what it is. Make your own determinations. I think it's a complex subject, and anyone with a simple answer is just, needs to understand that they're probably wrong because human beings are complex creatures. But it is true. I mean, I think it's a little bit relaxed now. I mean, I think that male nudity in film is not quite as exotic as it once was, but it's still not particularly marketable. I guess Bruce Willis in Color of Night, right? That's the example where it made money.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But other than that,
didn't need to see Bruce's Willis. I don't think a lot of women were clamoring for that either. But that's just
that movie made money off that controversy, though. So I mean,
it did.
It's the only example I can think of. Whereas male nudity for a mainstream film was, a marketable plus.
But they always shy away from the male nudity. It always seems like.
Well, nudity is rarer now than it was a couple decades ago in the film period now.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
So, because again, I think people are worried about the social and political themes that people are going to inject on top of it now. Whereas in the past, it was like, hey, it's a beautiful woman and she's not wearing clothes was kind of its own selling point. I don't think there was a lot of thought put into those aspects. It was more or less like we need to get butts and seats.
Speaking of clothes, I'm very happy to be wearing my Velvet Vampire T-shirt.
Oh, there you go. I am wearing an All the Colors of the Night T-shirt.
Oh, awesome!
The great Sergio Martino's best film.
Now, okay, doesn't this turn you on, Lauren? Her in this pink frock and a raw whole chicken. Doesn't that turn you on?
I'm not sure the whole chicken has much to do with
it. She loves her raw meat.
Well, again, inside the budget, how can you portray someone as otherworldly,
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's raw chicken right there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd do that for a film. And look at that kind of careless, upwardly pointed zoom. We don't use smash zooms anymore in film, and I think we need to bring it back. The ghost of Lucio Fulci demands smash zooms be reinstated into films and extreme close-ups of eyeballs. We need this. So we're beyond the halfway point.
We are beyond the halfway point. This is only an 80-minute movie, just to let everybody know. But I think it works beautifully at that running time. To be perfectly honest,
I think that most films would benefit from around the 95-minute mark being about the end of most movies. Now, there's exceptions, and I love some films that are exceptions, but in general, there's not enough going on for these 110-minute, run times.
Now, isn't that classy or what? Okay, now on the commentary, Celeste Yarnell was saying that Michael Blodgett put masking tape over his junk because he felt a little uncomfortable working under not uncomfortable, but working under a female director. He wanted to keep himself, I guess, contained. He wore masking tape over his junk and put body makeup over it.
You do you, man.
Yeah,
I think. See, the thing is, no one would want me in a film like this and in a scene like this. But if someone did and was paying me, it's either all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. Yeah, come on.
Either you agree to do it or you don't.
Yeah.
Ghost, I'm at 4640.
Yep, 4650 I just reached. Yep.
There must have been some kind of cultural shift in our society, whereas women stopped wearing as many skirts and dresses as they once did. And I wonder what that's about.
All I know is I want to wear that shirt that Michael Blodgett is wearing right now.
Well, the problem with that is the 1972 police will come and arrest you.
Yes, exactly. I'm fascinated by the 70s. I just can't help it.
I definitely like 70s fashion more than I like 80s fashion. That's for
Yes.
goddamn sure.
I bring back the bell bottoms, man. Why not?
I don't know about the bell bottoms because that brings up disco memories, but I when people get all fetishy about the 80s, I tune out, man, because I lived through the 80s and I can tell you it was an ugly, ugly time period.
I mean, it still had great movies. I mean, but yeah, it was still
Some.
ugly. Yeah.
Again, we fetishize the films too.
Yes, exactly.
I would argue there's a lot better films in the 70s than there are in the 80s in general.
Are there any extras on that Terminal Island Blu-ray that you brought out?
I don't know. I don't watch them. Let's see. Brand new 16:9 widescreen master from the UCLA director Stephanie Rothman's archived print. Play with Inmates, audio commentary with Sean Kinney and Don Marshall, moderated by Scott Spiegel. On-camera interview with Sean Kinney and Don Marshall. Phone interview with star Phyllis Davis. And original theatrical trailer, Code Red trailers. I've not watched any of them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't get excited about extras on discs at all.
I love my extras. I can't help it. I love my extras. Did you see the Dead Zone? It's going to have 4 audio commentaries.
Did you see that artwork on it? It made me want to vomit.
The artwork is horrible. I did not like the artwork at all.
If that's not reversible to at least the original one sheet, I like that film. I don't know, but Scream Factory putting out, so that means it's going to be a $35 title. You know, I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird film because Cronenberg was probably not the right guy to adapt King. To be honest with you, his aesthetics are just so different.
Yeah, critics liked it.
I like it. I just think it's just a weird film for both a King adaptation because it's a little too weighty and thoughty, which is kind of like what you get from Cronenberg, but for a King film, and then it's too King for a Cronenberg film. Like it feels like someone put the bumpers in the aisles in Cronenberg's Game of Bowling, right? But I like the film. I mean, it definitely is a film that needed Christopher Walken. That didn't look deep enough to actually throw someone into safely. Just saying.
Okay, now this actor right here, I forget his last name, but his first name is Jerry. They both worked together on a very famous Star Trek episode called The Apple. And that's part of the reason why she would get on the convention circuit and Star Trek fans would know her, but eventually the Velvet Vampire base got to her too. So Quentin Tarantino owns a 35 millimeter print of this movie. Lucky bastard. Yeah, those red boots definitely stand out.
I think we're learning a little bit about Stone Gassman's women's 70s apparel fetishism going on tonight.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, I think Russ Myers' wife took care of that department for the most part.
Yeah, I think I need a dune buggy. That's gonna be a hard find in New Jersey, isn't it? And I don't really own enough property to even use it properly, but
I'm serious when I say I want to read Michael Blodgett's books now, because I've now become a fan of his after these 2 films. I think he wrote thrillers. I don't think he wrote horror books. I think he wrote like dramatic thrillers. Died in the 1870s. And there's very little gore in this movie, surprisingly enough. I mean, even in
there's a
the
little
neck
blood.
bites, it's a little bit of blood. It's not much.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Well, this is before the era of elaborate special effects in America anyway. You really have to get to about 75, 76 just for that to start really rolling. At this point, it's all just theatrical, what you'd see on a stage. That kind of effect for quote-unquote gore. You know.
he kind of looked like Starsky.
Everyone from the 70s looked like Starsky. I think I was 6 in the 70s, and I looked like Starsky.
No. Did you watch that show, seriously? Starsky and Hutch?
It was on the air. I remember it, so I must have. But
Oh, no, you watched Chips, didn't you?
everyone watched Chips. Everyone watched MASH. Everyone watched the A-Team. Everyone watched... Believe me. Oh, God. Barney Miller was like...
Barney Miller. I reviewed a whole season of Chips online, and what struck me about that show was they never take out their guns. Where the hell do they think that they are? Dog Patch? What the hell? They never take out their damn guns.
The only good thing about Chips is that the entire LA punk scene cameo in the series. Like Leaving from Fear and Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys. They're all, Jack Grissom from TSOL. They're all in episodes because they were all in these bands that weren't making them any money. So they were all taking these dumb roles as the street punk in the beginning of the episode who did something and got chased down by the bike cops. But so it's always fun playing, Spot the punk rocker. But.
Hey, shout out to Jamie in the chat. Hey, I announced at the beginning of the commentary that in 2 weeks I'll be doing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I'd love you to join me for that. Dukes of Hazzard. Oh man, I don't think I can watch that now. It's I don't know. It's just kind of insulting to the intelligence a little bit. Maybe it's just me. I mean, maybe it's just too lowbrow for me. But I don't know.
What 80s show can you watch then? They were all kind of insulting.
Hey. Well, I mean, I'm nobody because my favorite film of the 80s nobody remembers. It was called Mr. Belvedere. But anyway. The Greatest American Hero.
Sure, with William Catt.
Yeah.
First 2 seasons are great. Third season sucks so bad.
Third season sucked.
Oh, they tried to replace William Catt.
Jamie says, I'm there for Willy Wonka for sure. Awesome. Yeah, I want to have like 5 or 6 people for that one. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I refuse to even mention the Tim Burton movie. I will never, ever mention that.
Tim Burton never adapted Donald Rawl.
To me, it doesn't exist.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exist. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It never happened. Never happened.
There's certain things we can admit happened, like Ghoulies 4, where they didn't use any puppets. They were just little people in makeup. We can admit shit like that happens, but there's some things that just didn't happen. Dino De Laurentiis never produced his version of Red Dragon. That never happened either. There's things that didn't happen. Tim Burton actually died in a tragic helicopter crash circa 1994. He never made any movies after that.
These dream sequences are very, very vivid.
Well, they look like shampoo commercials, but yeah.
Yeah, for the time. Reminds me of Bo Derek in 10 for some reason. When he's running it.
I think we remember 10 very differently.
Yes. Keep running, Blodgett. We got to get to 80 minutes. Come on.
You got 22 more minutes of running to go.
22 more minutes of Michael Blodgett running.
Running in slow motion.
Yeah, there you go.
Although I'm pretty sure you could isolate just him and replace the background with any scene from a Transformers movie, and it would look exactly the same. Because they all have that like big mechanical crap happening in the background and one guy running against a green screen, obviously.
One more person I wanted to quote was Leticia Lopez, who wrote an article for Fangoria in May, just last month, called Vixen with a Fatal Sex Drive, The Velvet Vampire. The last paragraph she writes, The Velvet Vampire was a transgressive film that introduced shocking content that was meticulously unfolding in the horror cinema and movie industry. Although its independent production got lost among the major horror film releases in 1971, The Velvet Vampire became a cult classic as a result of its progressive plot and dynamic female roles. The intimacy existent among women and the free love movement were both represented in the film without consequences and judgment in the plot. Susan and Diane shared mutual recognition and honor for their form of thinking, reacting, and their bodies' anatomy. Their sexuality did not threaten them or victimize them, and instead it strengthened them. They were aware of their independence, their recognition of seeking pleasure and receiving pleasure by seducing men without having to give something in return. They were there for each other when troubles arose. This woman-to-woman bond was far stronger than the relationship between spouses Susan and Lee. In The Velvet Vampire, men are the diminished gender, the outcasts, prey to a story dominated by women, much more powerful than they ever could be.
That is some bullshit pulled out.
Oh, you think it's bullshit? Damn.
This is a Roger Corman exploitation film that gets all the prerequisite exploitation elements in place. And yes, the director had some style, but let's not blow this out of fucking proportion, people. Come on.
I mean,
this is a movie about a gorgeous gothic vampire who rides around in a dune buggy and gets negged every 25 minutes.
I love it, though.
It's okay to love something that doesn't really have that much redeeming value. It looks great. It's shot great.
Yes.
You can love the performances. Doesn't mean it has a lot to say about society. I don't think it does.
And believe me, this Blu-ray is awesome. You can try to get a copy to anybody out there who still wants to get it. There's only a few of these left, so just saying. It looks awesome. I adore it. This is one I'll definitely watch multiple times for sure. Again, I mean, she's wearing another different hat and another these. She's wearing these long-sleeved, very elegant costumes in the middle of the deserts, and the couple at least is embracing
she's a vampire. She's cold-blooded. There's no worries.
Of course she's cold-blooded.
She's dead.
Yeah.
The heater's gone out a long time ago, and she didn't replace the plugs. So. Now, you read that quote from Fangoria, and that's really actually, I don't mean to pick on that writer, but it really is the problem of Fangoria now. The self-importance of what should be a monster mag is just, it pushes me so far away. And I loved Fangoria growing up. It was so important to me. I have the first 100 issues. I wrote letters to editors that got published. I love Fangoria, but what they've become in their new incarnation is just this attempt to make the genre into something it really isn't. You can talk about the themes that were in the air at the time of the film coming out, and that's fine. But don't overplay your hand, and pick your examples carefully, please. I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
I can't take certain amounts of film criticism too seriously. I mean, I don't know. Again, if the patina on this film was not Roger Corman,
Yes.
I think it would be a lot easier for me to even take that kind of evaluation, but I don't know.
Too over
I'm not
the
going to
top.
look for the. Well, listen, you can talk about Blackula having progressive social themes, and I guess you're right on some level. But on another level, they made a Black Dracula movie. I mean,
It's a Black Dracula.
let's keep things in its proper place.
And I actually like the Pam Grier sequel, even though it was
Scream, Blackula, Scream.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, except that most of the film's shot in a freaking parking garage. Besides that,
I know.
and that's just a budget. I wish they'd give them some money to play with.
Yeah.
I'm not demeaning Blackula, by the way. I think Blackula is actually a pretty great film.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't call it an important civil rights movement moment at all. And I see people do that kind of crap all the time. I'm like, I don't know. I think there might have been more important things going on at that moment in the fight for equality than that movie.
I mean, the colors in this scene are amazing. The clash of the orange of the bed and his blue shirt and her red, and there she goes.
And he doesn't mind.
Yeah, he's enjoying it too much for a minute. Yeah. Oh shit!
Just for the record, I have a no bite and no scratch policy. For real, that was not a bluff. Yeah, oh yeah, no. Focusing on all the wrong things, friends. And
now this actress, we haven't talked much about her, but then again, she didn't do anything else. I mean, she what Celeste Yarnell said on the commentary was that she basically was with her drama coach the entire time she wasn't shooting.
Well, I don't think it's terribly difficult to figure out why she was cast. So
yes, I know exactly.
Although I think it's kind of funny that she's dressed basically as a Wonder Woman villain here.
What are your favorite Roger Corman movies from that period? Do you like
from this period,
or stuff like that?
For Corman, I always go earlier. Pit and Pendulum, Mask of Red Death,
the Edgar Allan Poe movies. Yeah,
the Poe series. Haunted Palace, because I like the fact that someone was trying to do Lovecraft that early. And then the problem with Corman is then after that period, you have to kind of decide which schlock you love. And I do.
Yeah.
So you have something like Humanoids from the Deep, which I love, but it's schlock, right? Again, let's not. And then you go to the direct-to-DVD era, and the first Carnosaur is a lot of fun. Not so much the sequels that just reuse the same footage, but the first one's a lot of fun. So Corman's one of those guys that always understood his audience, and that's why he was successful.
Yeah.
He knew what kind of films he would have paid to see as a 14-year-old boy, you know?
And Roger Corman, of course, was more open to women directors than most. I mean, I also love Kat Shea's work with him, Strip to Kill, and a great little vampire movie from '89 that she made called no, it's not Dancer of the Dark. No, it's not that.
It's
come on, Lauren, you know.
I do. It's like oh Jesus.
Dance of the Damned. That's it. Dance of the Damned. Yeah, and also her
and that was remade by Corman like 10 years later.
Yes, yeah, but I prefer the Kat Shea version, to be perfectly honest. And then the last film she did for Corman was Streets, the film debut of Alicia Silverstone, where she was this teenage runaway in Venice, California, and the story is that this psychotic cop is stalking runaways and shooting them. It's actually really good. It's an interesting fusion of two genres.
Well, again, I think it's interesting that Corman was a guy who he wouldn't spend much on the films, but he wouldn't go into production before the screenplay was ready.
Right.
You know, I mean,
right.
There's cases where it fell apart and there was no screenplay. That happened, but in general, they did spend a little bit more time making sure they knew what they were making, because you didn't have the time to make it up on the fly. It had to be plotted out. You had to have your shot list. You had to get your 15 to 30 shots a day, and it had to happen because you had 3 weeks, no days off, and that's what you had.
And here's the famous women's seduction right here. All she needed was a few more seconds on the neck. Just a few more seconds. Come back. And there's Blodgett.
That's a horror movie trope that I love. It's like a curtain was holding up his fucking body.
Yeah, exactly. What? Wait a minute. Oh, no.
It's like bodies fall in horror movies when they need to fall.
No. Oh, right to the hand. I like that. I like the look of that knife or whatever it is. Or what would be the proper term for that? What she put in her hand?
It's I don't know, some kind of dagger. I don't know.
The dagger, yeah. Can you imagine running in the desert like that?
I don't need to, because apparently she's sharing the experience with us.
Oh, she's wearing like white shoes
and a bikini, because that's what you tend to do.
Yes.
White
exactly.
sneakers. She's wearing her white Jordans and her leopard print bikini.
Leopard print bikini, exactly.
And apparently Meatloaf is here to save the day.
Yeah, at least he's not coming off like a sleazeball, though. No place? Yeah, I'm running from no place. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you see, if you just waited a little bit longer.
Wait a little bit longer. Let's see. Oh, Daily Ghost mentioned Bolero with Bo Derek. Oh, God. She was a producer on that movie, too. Can you imagine that Ravel's Bolero is now the most expensive piece of film music in history because of Bo Derek and 10? It's no joke. Okay, these dresses that she wears are the greatest. The dresses and the hats. The Velvet Vampire has an awesome sense of fashion, I do believe.
There you go, friends. You've heard it here. Stone wants women to wear hats. At all times.
wear more hats. Yes.
Hats.
Okay. About 9 minutes left here to go. I guess this is in the Los Angeles train station, or Greyhound bus station. Yeah.
He's like, I'm your retirement, and this is how I'm supposed to spend the last 6 months of my retirement. Before retirement, giving out directions to lost tourists. I really don't want to deal with your fucking vampire story, okay?
Yes.
I'm going to pretend that you never spoke with me. What exactly is pressing? Drugstore, coffee shop, pressing. Can you like press a suit while you're at the Greyhound station? Times have changed.
You know, it's amazing what you see in some of these old movies. When I saw the Warriors at the Alamo Draft House, one subway station, I swear I saw a place that said "Subway Shop for Women." Whoa! Okay.
I thought the best thing was inside a film recognizing that things had changed was when the Blade Runner 2049 came out, and when they did the cityscape, they still used all the logos of all these companies that had gone out of business, because in that world they didn't. You know, they're like, no, it's all legit. There's no continuity problems here.
Oh man. But she's a vampire and she murdered my husband. Oh man.
Look at that bay of payphones like today. So impossible for kids to even understand what the hell is going on.
Yeah. How many payphones are there? Like 50? Oh man, how times have changed.
Now, unfortunately, our vampire is reflecting in those glass in the glass. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a whole section marked telephones.
Yeah.
It was like a whole section of the station, telephones.
It was the entire 555 area code right there.
It's pretty much.
You think the poor AD was like on a laundry cart, on a luggage cart, and they were pulling him, or what? You see that guy she pushed out of the way had a earpiece. You see that? It's some production for some production guy. Didn't take the earpiece out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Did you know what she was thinking the first time she saw that?
No.
Oh, I know. I'll just get these crosses without paying for them.
That's what Jesus would do. He'd overturn some.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Here. She's a vampire. It actually reminds me of that scene in, The Love Witch by Anna Biller has like many callbacks, I think, but near the end when they're like, burn the witch, and they're chasing her down the road. Oh, yeah. But didn't you love The Love Witch, the Wicker Man sequence?
I have very mixed feelings about Love Witch. The stuff I love about it and the stuff I don't love about it.
It was 35 millimeter, Lauren. That needs to be celebrated.
A lot of things have been 35 millimeter that I don't celebrate.
Yeah, but nobody shoots on 35 millimeter film anymore. I mean, it should be celebrated that she did it. At the very least.
I don't. Whatever. I don't celebrate one thing or another. On the whole, I like that film a lot, but there's things. Holy God! I mean, the entire mock wedding. Cut that fucking thing in half.
Unicorns, rainbows, and Lucky Charms.
Yeah, exactly.
I love every minute of it, though. But Love Witch had about, oh my God, it had over like 36 inspirations. I mean, everything from Jean Dielman, the 3-hour French movie, to this, The Velvet Vampire. It had many inspirations. And we are about to conclude. Now, I love at the end of the sprint, there's 3 minutes left. At the very end, all it shows is the cast list and then the old MPAA R rating logo. And that's the end of the movie.
Well, the unions didn't have any power yet to force the MPA to force filmmakers to include every technician and every carpenter who worked on the film. Hence how you get those Marvel credit sequences that are longer than this movie.
Yes. But, I mean, this is a nice little treat at 80 minutes, I think. Nice little treat. I guess we're going to have to do some historical digging to see if this truly is the very first horror film directed by a woman. But I'd be happy if it does claim that title, though. I'll say that. She needed regular transfusions. Okay, I know this is going to be a weird note to end this commentary on, but have you ever seen Lady Dracula with Louise Fletcher?
Yes.
That is probably one of the absolute worst movies of that kind that I think I've ever seen.
It's up there.
Oh, yeah. Or down there, rather. I mean, you know, it reduces itself to just, you know, these two guys asking girls in dressing rooms saying, "Oh, are you a virgin?" Because Louise Fletcher needs the blood of virgins to survive. But yeah, that's the joke. That's the whole joke of Lady Dracula is virgins.
Not to be confused with Countess Dracula, which is a great Hammer film.
Oh yes.
And what we're seeing now on screen is basically no different than Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton's relationship. So this is the kind of crap they would do anyway. We finally get our close-up of eyes. See, I knew it would happen.
Yes, indeed.
It wasn't quite a smash zoom, but you know, we still got the eye close-up, so I'm happy.
And there is the Velvet Jerry Daniels. Okay, that's what was his name, the Velvet Vampire. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, you know, I highly recommend it. I think Lauren likes it enough, right?
I do. Make sure you like this sort of thing, though. These kind of early 70s exploitation films in which they're kind of leisurely with their pace, and it's more about taking in the experience and the atmosphere and the mood. If you go in expecting an action horror film, you're in trouble. If you're expecting something with a really detailed, intricate plot, you're in trouble. But if you like things like Daughters of Darkness, give this a chance. And definitely, if you like the films of Jess Franco, definitely, I would say give it a chance because it's kind of like the American cousin.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And as I said before, I'm not joking. I'm going to actually later on try to read some of Michael Blodgett's books because I'm now a huge fan of that guy. So after BVD and Velvet Vampire. So at any rate, well, Lauren, thank you very much for joining me tonight. This has been awesome. And at any rate, I mean, hope to see you all in a couple weeks. Like I said, I'll be doing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So at any rate, have a good night, everybody. Thank you for watching and peace. Yes.